Hello, I am Tavis, and welcome to my first video of teaching people how to play the washboard. This video will cover basically which items you need to collect to have your full instrument. So naturally the first thing you have to do is pick out a washboard. I find washboards have pretty similar sounds, but there are some specific things to consider when picking out a washboard. Washboards are made out of different materials. One on the left is made out of glass, one on your right is made out of steel, and my personal favorite here is made out of brass. Overall, I discourage glass. It's made very thick to keep the glass from breaking and doesn't have much vibration to it. Most of the sound you'll get is based on what you stroke the washboard with. Perhaps that's the approach you want to go with, but overall I discourage it. Most washboards are made out of steel. Pretty much any metal washboard is made thin, which allows good vibration. But I particularly like brass. It's a very good vibrating sound metal, and all brass instruments are made out of it for a reason. Other things to consider is whether you want a washboard with ridgets. These little dents that are made in the rows of the washboard here. For years I avoided ridgets. The steel one here has no ridgets. It's basically shaped like a paper fan. I avoided ridgets because it basically adds a lot it seemed like it added a lot of extra sound that you didn't really need. But as I developed my stroking technique, I eventually realized it gives a little more variety of sound to your stroking, which is useful once you develop your technique, so I encourage it. I would say the most important thing to do is get yourself a washboard that has wooden panels on the back. If you've ever played like a string acoustic instrument, when metal vibrates inside of a wood, it makes a better sound, and that applies to washboards as well. It also adds more variety of sound, which is useful for pretty much any percussive instrument. So I highly encourage it. So the next thing you have to figure out and collect is basically which items you're going to use to stroke the washboard with. Now the truth is basically the limit of what you stroke with is pretty much the limit of your creativity. You can stroke just about anything against a washboard. If you think it sounds good, then hey, work with it. And some people do use some unusual things. But if you want to stick with something more traditional, like the washboard, you generally stick with stuff that is a normal household object that you find around the house. The standard thing is a thimble in the top left there, which was originally used for sewing purposes. People also use things like metal spoons and bottle caps, pretty standard household stuff. But I personally like to use banjo picks. Banjo picks do give you some less aggressive sounds and give you some good stroking motions that are somewhat limited with other objects. The other utensil that I like to use is a drum brush. Drum brushes are useful for moments when you need things to be a little more laid back and you need a softer sound. But it still works pretty well when you use it as filler and mix it in with the other stroking utensils. So, those are the various washboards and utensils that I personally like to use when playing the washboard. If you have any questions or want to add some personal thoughts on how you like to play the washboard, feel free to put them in the comments below.